911, where's your emergency?
I need an ambulance right away. My son just overdosed on heroin.
What's your address?
Please.
What's your...
He's unconscious. Please, hurry.
Okay, I'll stay on the phone with me, okay?
Okay. Please, hurry.
Is he breathing?
I don't know. I don't.
I overdosed 14 times whenever I was using. I went to 7 different treatment centers. I went to jail a bunch. So I had a lot of failures that led me to where I am now.
The number of drug overdoses has skyrocketed in Arkansas. The use of the opioid overdose reversing drug Narcan has more than doubled.
All too common. Someone has overdosed.
How many people has Arkansas lost? Well, how many does it take?
At the Hot Springs Police Department, I was on an overdose response team, so I had a phone and a car. Anytime, 24 hours a day, if somebody overdosed, they'd call me and I'd respond to the overdose. And my job was to provide, I had a lot of resources. So I built a lot of working relationships with places in Hot Springs for people with drug addiction. So I was able to connect them with all sorts of different resources and try to help them get into recovery.
Hot Springs had a very dynamic opioid overdose type situation going on. We've been the second highest prescribing state in the nation for over 15 years. And we're at the lowest point we've been in 15 years, but we're still second in the nation.
Well, I'll tell you, in the 2 years that I was in Hot Springs, we were having 12 to 13 overdoses a month.
People that were struggling with the disease could find no help or no way to get help, and everything was set against them. I'll be honest with you, I felt really guilty about it because I think I contributed to the problem indirectly, but that was what we were being trained by society to do. To try to wrest your way out of this problem, and that wasn't going to work.
Criminalization just insulates and isolates people who use drugs to be in spaces where they're putting themselves in danger, putting others in danger. You may briefly arrest a couple of major players or something, but it's just a matter of time before someone's replaced and the system is back up and running. I think that we're going to see the most substantial improvement in the opioid crisis if we treat harm reduction as a first-line response. So harm reduction is both a set of strategies to reduce harms as well as like a philosophy and a movement that centers the experiences of people who use drugs, people who inject drugs as experts on their own drug use, on their lives, and as the ultimate answer on how they're going to improve their health.
And some of the stuff that I've seen our harm reduction things people do are great, but some of the stuff that I've seen them do are careless. Being responsible with what we're doing is a part of the solution, but you have to believe in being responsible and you have to believe in being evidence-based.
The CDC, the SAMHSA, NASDAD, which is another big voice in drug health, have all defended and support harm reduction as an evidence-based tool for reducing the harms, reducing the cases of overdoses, and increasing retention and treatment programs. And so they're going to need harm reductionists to do this. You're not going to reach a lot of people. You may reach people who are within your community, your law enforcement community, either other officers, former officers, families, supporters of that nature, but you're not going to get the folks out in rural Arkansas who don't call the cops over anything. There's really no pathway forth with legitimizing harm reduction without cooperation from law enforcement in the state.
Everything that has to do with addiction recovery, like harm reduction, all of these different things, there's a place for all of it. And I would never want to get rid of any of it. I think there's good and bad to harm reduction. I definitely wouldn't want to do away with any of it though, because if it helps anybody, it's worth keeping it.
Medication-assisted therapy. I've also seen medication-assisted treatment. The CDC has been cited as saying that methadone is actually safe for lifetime use.
Right, so it's one of those things where I think that there's a place for everything. I had a negative experience with 2 different forms of MAT, Suboxone, and I also tried methadone. They're medications that somebody with opioid addiction could take and they don't feel their withdrawal and their cravings are reduced. When I did it, it was a long time ago, and nobody really knew what it was. When somebody said, hey, you could just take this medicine and it goes away, you know. So I thought this was just the easy way to do it. I didn't understand that when I take it, my body is still physically and mentally addicted to this medication now. The only difference is I'm not doing illegal things to get it. It's prescribed to me, it's safe. But if I stop taking it, I'm just as sick, if not worse, you know, from withdrawals than I was. Something happened financially, you know, and I wasn't able to pay at one time, so I didn't get the medicine, so I was sick. And I went right back to using, and I feel like I was worse from being sick from that than I was when I was just using drugs. So after that, as sick as I was sick for like 4 or 5 weeks, you know, withdrawing and using drugs, trying to get through it. I was done with that as an option for me. Becoming a peer recovery specialist, one of the things that we talk about is multiple pathways to recovery. So I didn't believe that was a thing. I had the pathway that I chose. I thought that was the only way that anybody could ever get into recovery from addiction. Medication-assisted treatment, we talked about that in the beginning of my recovery. After my experience with it, I hated it. I thought it was horrible. I thought it, you know, all it does is destroy people's lives, you know. But then over the last couple of years, you know, I've met a lot of people that were very successful on it, and they took it and they transitioned off of it, and they have great lives now. So it's like I had no choice but to kind of change my stance on it a little, because I do see it working in other people. In Hot Springs, in the last 6 months of 2022, we had about 2 to 3 overdoses a month. And then I worked there this year until March. And we had 1 overdose in January, 1 overdose in February, and none in March. So just the things that we were doing in Hot Springs, obviously we're working to reduce overdose numbers there.
The Arkansas Opioid Recovery Partnership has some good elements for funding. We are looking to do what the state has not done. We're looking to put dollars into parts of the state that are struggling, that people cannot get help.
And a lot of these programs that work on reentry are also struggling for support and funding because of the stigma around incarcerated people and people who use drugs. You know, these people should just deal with their consequences and suffer and build their way back up from the bottom. And it's like, they're not starting from the bottom, they're starting from hell. They're not starting with the rest of us. And it's not fair to expect those people to make a miracle, to just suddenly stop using drugs, to suddenly stop selling drugs. Like, there's so much in play that we really need to address. On the very base level, carry naloxone. Carry naloxone, know how to use naloxone, know how to recognize an overdose. Someone on the street is gonna respond a whole lot quicker than an ambulance.
I think those drug take-back things, you know, probably helps a little bit when people have prescription medications that they don't use anymore, you know, giving them back.
So we went through the years of just telling people to just say no, and we see that obviously didn't work. So it's more important to give people the information that they need so they can make informed decisions about their health and their life. I think that's the plan that's going to actually work.
And yeah, so as long as people continue to believe that people who use drugs and people who inject drugs are like a separate group of people that just need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, we're going to continue to see overdose deaths, because that stigma and the ostracizing just makes people want to hide. It makes them not want to tell you what's going on.
That stigma, you know, the stigmatized attitude, you know, if people could stop, you know, with the negative attitude towards people, that would help, because it does stop people get ashamed and they don't want to ask for help or say that they need help because, oh, everybody's going to think I'm a horrible person. If we could reduce some of that, people would be more comfortable with being like, hey, I need help. Every single person has the ability to change. The biggest misconception that I've found is just that some people think that they can't change, they're never going to change, they're always going to be like, people said that about me, you know. But May 7th will be 5 years. So it's May 7th, 2018 is my day.
Yeah, that's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Just don't get enough of me.